How's it going today, guys? So today, just a little bit of a layout update. Was working on the mountains a little bit and doing the Sculptamold, and first time working with it, and it was really interesting. I found out that it was easier than what I thought it was going to be, and that's usually the case of me overthinking things. And just as I said before, whenever working with the plaster cloth and the cardboard lattice, there's really no wrong way to go about doing stuff. It's just about doing it, and you can always change it and shape it as you go. So if you didn't like exactly what you did the first time, you can kind of put a little bit more layers on, which on the small hill, I didn't put any Sculptamold on at first. I painted it. Really wasn't happy with the way that it turned out. I wanted to do a little bit more rock face up against the track. So I went over top of it, put some Sculptamold on it. After that dries, I'm gonna paint it to look like rocks. I did do a kind of a test on some of the ground cover of what I'm gonna do. So you'll see that here in a little bit, and then after that's all done, then I can start ballasting around. I did start on the big mountain behind me, and then I started on the portion of the track that goes through the tunnel, just because I didn't want anything to move or shift or anything like that. I did pick up some number 4 screws and put down through the foam and into the plywood underneath, just that way it held everything in. And then before I do anything of ballasting in the back, I'm gonna pull one of the track sections out about halfway through and just put a jumper down in, because I don't want to have any problems in the future with whatever command setup that I decide on going with. I don't want to have any problems with the track dropping voltage or anything like that. So just running a quick jumper is real easy to do. So in that way I can just wire everything in underneath the table. So I did decide to leave the inner loop wired separately from the outer loop. So the inner loop is going to stay on the CW80 transformer, because the Berkshire Junior that I have has a whistle and a bell function, and the ZW transformer can only do the whistle function. So I lose the bell whenever I run that train on the outer loop. So I decided just to leave it on the inner loop, that way that I could retain that until I decide what command setup that I want to go with. I'm still kind of leaning towards one of the Lionel ones. I've been browsing eBay, and just I really should have picked one up when I was at the Canfield show. There was a Cab 1 set up with the remote and everything for like $125, and I really should have gotten that. But I decided to buy some other stuff to try to finish the layout, and I can just run everything right now in conventional mode. I was eyeing a MTH SD40 that was able to run conventional or with the MTH DCS system. So I'm still kind of in the middle. There are benefits to both, but I still haven't decided which way I want to go yet. And I want to tell myself that I'm far away from deciding that, but I think that decision is going to have to come sooner than later, just because different engines are catching my eye, and I want to decide which way I want to go early on. That way I can kind of try to stay in that ecosystem for the time being, and not try to branch out too fast in too many ways. But let's let's finish up the big mountain. I did about half of it yesterday. It was a nice rainy, dreary day, so it wasn't really much that I could do outside. So it was a work on the train layout kind of night, and it's continuing to rain outside today. So what better opportunity to try to finish up some of the scenery stuff, and that way we could start getting some ground cover laid down, and then we can continue. I still haven't decided what building I'm going to put in the back here. This plant goes over on the other side of the Chesapeake Sand Company building that I have at the base of the mountain. So I've really kind of been giving some thought on that. I want to stay with an industrial standpoint of things. So I was thinking, maybe a junkyard. I already have, the shipping, and then I'm going to have the train shed here, that I have a bunch of work to do inside of it. But it's just when I have everything, all the buildings mock set up, this empty space is just a little bit too empty. I don't want to pack it full to make it really, really busy, but also I don't feel that it flows with the layout. So it's one of those things that my indecisiveness is getting the best of me. I want to go one way, but then I see something else and I want to do that. So more to come on that space. So yeah, let's get to it. So this is kind of going to be what the layout on top of the mountain is going towards. I'm still thinking about the cabin that I'm going to put, I think, right here, kind of at the base. And then I was going to do a little camping scene of the Woodland Scenics ones that I have. But I know in my mind of what I want it to look like. It's just putting it down on the layout and making it feel right. But yeah, I did this portion of the layout on with the Sculptamold. Like I said, it was the very first time working with it. It was really, really easy to work with, a little bit easier than I anticipated, and it really gave it great definition. And I was still able to retain. There are some bumps that I kind of caused in the cardboard lattice that I thought would look kind of cool and give it a little bit extra texture. And I was able to put the plaster cloth on, put the Sculptamold on a little bit thin right there, just to cover the holes in the plaster cloth. That way, whenever I put paint or ground cover on it, it would cover those up. And I was still able to retain that shape that I kind of had in mind. I was able to round off a lot of things and make it look more natural. So, and there was over there where I put the rocks, glued those on. I was able to put the Sculptamold around and really kind of pack it in against the terrain and the mountain there, and made it flow a lot better. And I just think it's going to work out in my favor of giving it that extra step of realism. So, but I wanted to leave this up here nice and flat, that way I could do a little camping scene kind of above everything. So over here was kind of as I was talking about. I decided to paint up here, and then I was kind of using the paint to get the ground cover to stick. So I applied the paint while it was still wet, sprinkled some of the ground cover, and this was the Bachmann dark green coarse. Kind of what I was going to do, and I was going to do a mixture between the dark green coarse, the Woodland Scenics light green coarse turf, and then kind of go over it in spots of the Woodland Scenics fine turf weeds. This is kind of just a start of the ground cover that I have, and I just wanted to see what I was working with, and in that aspect. And you know, I was always going to be able to add some and, you know, mix the colors up. There is a background that I'm going to do against here that is kind of like a forest hill. So I was trying to get colors that matched with that the best I could, just to kind of make everything flow. But yeah, I was real happy with the way that this turned out. I was able to kind of apply the paint a little bit heavy in some areas where, you know, the holes weren't as prominent. But then, like I said, along here, this was kind of squared off, and it just really didn't look natural. So I put some Sculptamold, and I decided I wanted to have the Sculptamold look like this hill was cut away, and then, you know, had a rock formation here. That way it could transition to the track really nicely. So we'll this is still even a little bit tacky from last night, so gonna give it a little bit more time to dry, and you know, before I apply some paint to it. But I really like the way it turned out. I tried to press it in and mold it kind of just the best that I could, to make it look as natural as could be. All right, so here we got our Sculptamold mixture, and it's just a 2-to-1, 2 parts Sculptamold and 1 part water. So I've been using a cup that I'd fill completely all the way with the Sculptamold, and then halfway with water. And I found just making small batches like this works out well, because it gives me enough time to apply it. And if you mix too much, then it starts to set up and doesn't. You're gonna end up wasting it. And this is, I'm just going on and, you know, rounding off the edges, kind of what it would be, and not giving any harsh 90-degree angles. You know, kind of at the top here, and then, like I said, I'm just doing real thin coats of covering the plaster cloth, just because all I want it, I still want to retain, you know, most of the definition that it has, but I just want to fill in all the holes, so that doesn't poke through whenever I'm applying paint. So, like I said, it's real easy to work with the stuff. Just, you know, little by little, and just kind of press it in and smooth it out with your hand, and, you know, give it a little bit of texture. And if you put it on too smooth, you know, you can go over it and apply another coat, and maybe make a new rock or something. So, and kind of just go around the sides. I tried to do the base last night with, it was starting to set up and starting to harden, so it didn't want to stick to the vertical surface as much. So that's why I filled in the base here, and I think it worked out pretty well. So I did get a 3-pound bag, and I want to say with this batch right here, I'm probably 3/4 of the way through it. So, and that was with doing it on the small mountain and this mountain. So I think that it does go a long way. It really helped putting the paper, if you saw in the last video, where we put the packing paper underneath the plaster cloth to give it a little bit more definition. Then that way you don't have to use as much Sculptamold, because you're not using it to give it as much definition. You're just going over and covering the plaster cloth. That worked out a little bit better in saving as much material as we could, just because we created the definition of the rocks with the packing paper, and we're not using the plaster cloth to do that. But also, I'll move the camera here in a minute, around the tunnel where I didn't get the plaster cloth right up against it. We'll use the Sculptamold to kind of pack it in there, and you know, make it as the transition as tight and clean as possible, to where the tunnel portal looks like it got cut into the mountainside. So yep, we'll just do this here for a little bit, and let me finish this side and we'll move the camera here. So right here where I was talking, you can kind of still see a gap. So we'll just kind of pack it in there and make it a little bit, try to look as natural as possible. But we fill that in, and makes it flow. And I was actually kind of impressed with you know, how easy this stuff is to work with, and really kind of how forgiving it is, because even when it's a little bit dry and a little bit set, you can then go over it, and if you have any places that are sticking up, you can kind of press them down without trying to cut them or anything like that. So I just mixed up a half a batch on this one, just because I have just this small section to do. And there again, just not trying to waste any. But I think that 3-pound bag is going to be enough. So I was really kind of guessing on how much I was going to need to be. It didn't have any specifications on how far any of it went, so it was kind of just a guessing game. And when I started the project, I ordered one bag because I didn't think it was going to take as long for me to do the stuff as what I had anticipated. And it's kind of the thing whenever you're jumping in stuff. I started to do it, and then halfway through I kind of figured out a better way, so then that made that half look better, so then I had to go back and do all the first half over again, just because it's not going to be something that's museum quality and or anything like that, but I'm a pretty big fan of, if it's worth doing, it's worth doing right. And you want to do whatever looks good to you, and whatever you're happy with. It's your layout, and there may be better ways to do things. People may have different ways to do things. But as long as you're happy with the end result, and you enjoyed the process along the way, then that's really all that matters. And that's one of the best things about this hobby, is there's so many ways to achieve the same end goal, and it really gives people the opportunity to explore and do it themselves, and really make it their own. And they can take inspiration from other people and apply it to their own layout, or put their own little twist on it. So let's get this finished up, knocked out, and let it dry. So it's not too often that I guess right, but we emptied it and we got it just covered. So we're gonna let this dry, kind of sculpt it in a little bit. All in all, I'm really happy with the way it turned out. Let's kind of take a look at it. So all in all, I'm pretty happy with it. That's what it looks like. There. So thanks for tuning in. After the mountains dry and we start getting some paint on those, then we're going to work on the crown cover in the back of putting ballast down and starting to finish up everything there. So yeah, if you like what you saw, please like and subscribe, and comments are always welcome. And like I said, I am no means a professional at this. I'm just learning as I'm going and having fun while doing it. So I hope you guys enjoyed it, and we'll see you later.